Hello and welcome to Strategic Mental Health Services. My name is Carissa Bone. I'm the owner and founder, and today I want to talk to you about your psychological health. As a licensed professional counselor with over 25 years experience in direct services, consulting, from churches to schools to Fortune 50 companies, I've seen the impact of psychological health and well-being on almost every aspect of our lives. And the one piece of information that kept coming back to me as a trained mental health professional is, how did we get to where we're only discussing the issue of our psychological health after there's a problem? So I've made it my life's mission to approach our psychological health with a strategy that is both proactive and preventative, hence this channel. And today we're going to speak to one of the most crucial aspects of our psychological health, our thoughts. Did you know that on any given day, you have between 6,000 and 70,000 thoughts? You heard me correctly. According to our research, between 6,000 and 70,000 thoughts race through your mind or work their way through your mind each and every day. What I also know is that roughly 70%, maybe 80% of those thoughts are repetitive. Repetitive. That means you are thinking thoughts over and over and over. So guess what? Those thoughts impact how you feel. They also impact what you do, what you say, how you show up in the world. So the first thing that we are going to deal with in this series is all about your thinking and your thoughts. So if this applies to you, if you ever have thoughts, please join me in this conversation today. In fact, invite your friends, your relatives, your coworkers, even people you don't like that much to this conversation so that we can get nuggets of education and information to be aware and proactive in managing our psychological health and well-being. Okay, now let's get into it. Our psychological health encompasses our mind, our emotions, our spirituality, and also our body. Today, we're going to focus specifically on your mind. By the way, those components that I just mentioned, your mind, your body, your spirituality, your emotions, and also truly how you interact socially, are all criteria and aspects of who you are that we as mental health professionals observe and assess when you come to speak with us about any issue or problem you're working through. So I want to give you full insight and awareness so that we can come together and have an informed conversation around our psychological health. Today, as I mentioned, we're focusing on our thoughts. So let's do this exercise. I want you to pause with me and become aware of what you're thinking. You say, what, Carissa? Okay, what I'm teaching you today is to become a student of yourself, specifically a student of your thoughts. Self-awareness is something we hear thrown around here and there and everywhere, to be fully present, even to be mindful. These are all sort of jargon words that we use in our space of mental health and psychological health, but also they have become mainstays in conversation in society. You hear it on television, you hear apps promoting or you hear people promoting apps to help you to be more mindful or help you to be more present. Well, let's get it down to the bare bones, to the basics. Another thing that I've noticed is that the reason that we're sometimes challenged, for example, to know how to think about our thoughts or to become more self-aware or fully present is because we simply haven't been taught to. We throw the conversation out there, we throw the term out there, but then we don't know how to go or what to do from there. It sounds good, but how do we exercise those steps practically? My goal is that everyone will have the language, skills, and techniques to implement these strategies that we hear about. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about actually how you do these things that we hear about so often. So self-awareness, one, and self-awareness specifically as it relates to our thoughts. Now, back to that exercise I spoke of. Have you had a moment to think about your thoughts? Yes, I did say think about your thoughts. Well, you might say, Carissa, why would I ever do that? Glad you asked. Have you ever said, what was I thinking? After you did something? After you said something? Or maybe you asked someone else, what were you thinking? And they really couldn't even tell you. Well, maybe you've never said that. But maybe you said, I can't believe I fill in the blank. Belief, thought. Connecting the dots yet? Okay. Maybe that's still not something that you're thinking that warrants you going back to become an observer of your thoughts or think about your thoughts. Let's give this another shot. Has anyone ever told you you really need to think a little bit longer before you say what you say, or you don't care what you say, it just pops off out of your mouth? Oh, yes. And if still none of those resonate with you, maybe, just maybe, you have children, or you have students, or you have people you manage who could use this information. Okay. Well, that settles it. Each of us today can probably become an observer of our thoughts in a way that would serve us well. So this is what I want you to do. Just be quiet. How do you think about your thoughts? The first step is silence. So for the next 30 seconds, let's be quiet. And I want you to be aware of what's on your mind, very simply. And go. Okay. What was on your mind? Maybe it was the things that you have to do before the day is over. Was it possibly some things that you felt strongly about, tied to emotions? Maybe for you, it was just silence and you appreciated the silence. So the point of this exercise is simply to practice building this muscle of awareness as it relates to your thoughts. Because we are so busy doing X, Y, and Z, it requires thought and it requires pausing to really create the habit of being aware of what we are thinking. So when we have the presence of mind to stop and think, and not just think, but to be aware of what those thoughts are, then we can take the next step of understanding, is this thought fueling me or fatiguing me? The reason that I put it in those two categories is because of those 6,000 to 60,000 thoughts we're having, whether they are something that we are consciously aware of, or if they're more passive thoughts, which are kind of lingering, they're all driving what happens, right? The cool thing about this exercise is that by beginning here with your thoughts, you can find a space to have and own control of every action that you execute, of every word that you say, of every way that you show up in the space around you, by simply developing this key strategy of stopping to think about your thoughts. I've heard this stop to think before you act, but we're missing a huge component. When we stop and we think, we need to be aware of those thoughts before we choose how to proceed. It is so empowering to realize that we can choose what we think and how we think. You heard me. We have the power to choose what we think and how we think. That does get into critical thinking skills. It gets into how we feel, how we show up in the world. But I want to bring us back to ground zero to truly be aware of what is on our mind. Okay, so let's do this again. Remember, we're creating a habit. We're creating a muscle here in our mind. I want you to just pause and reflect on what I just said, that we have the power within ourselves to own what we think and how we think. Now, for the next 30 seconds, I want you to rehearse that in your mind. I have the power to determine what I think and how I think. And go. I have the power to determine what I think and how I think. Hear yourself saying that. I have the power to determine what I think and how I think. Say that with me to yourself. I have the power to determine what I think and how I think. Excellent. When we realize that we can literally manage our thoughts, then it is a gateway to manage everything that is within our control. In our current society, there's so many things that seem outside of our control. What we're doing here is bringing it all in and reining it in to what we can control and manage. And by the way, when we do this, it's going to feel empowering. It's one of the key ways to prevent feelings of hopelessness and helplessness. Remember, my work is all about being proactive and preventative. And the first place we are beginning is with our thoughts. So when you think, and I'm using that word again, think about the day, let's say just yesterday, for example. I want you to have top of mind something that happened and you felt like things were just out of control in that moment. Okay, now that you had that thing in your mind, or maybe it wasn't yesterday, I want you to think about something over the past week. If not yesterday, let's say over the past 7 days that seemed outside of your control. I want you to think about that. And when you think about that, I want you to point out to yourself if there was any opportunity for you to pause within that situation and, let's say, reevaluate how you were thinking in that moment. And by reevaluating, or basically thinking differently about that situation, what were the things that you could have thought of or executed differently? Because you've heard the phrase, your perception becomes your reality. I want us all to grasp this knowledge and this perception, which is fact, which is truth, that we can always go back to our space of control in what we think and how we think. So, here's a strategy for today. Pause, and I want you to do this at least 4 times per day, even if you have to put it on your calendar or make an alarm on your calendar. I want you to pause and intentionally reflect on what's on your mind at this moment. And then B, are those thoughts fueling you? That means, are they inspiring you? Are they moving you forward? Are they giving you information to help you make a decision that's going to benefit you? Or are they fatiguing? Are these thoughts that remind you of what you can't control? Are these thoughts that remind you of what someone else is doing, right? Because we don't have control over others. Are these thoughts that are fatiguing you in a way that is not going to get you the desired outcome? So A, stop to observe what you're thinking, and B, determine which category those thoughts are in. Are they in fueling me, getting me ready to do the thing or things that I need to do? Or are they fatiguing? They're taking away from me. They're adding stress or strain. So, like I said, 3 to 4 times a day. Now, here is a very key instance of when you can use this strategy. When you begin to feel that sense of overwhelmed, whether you're watching the news, you're into social media, maybe even in a very important meeting, you can pause within yourself, observe your thoughts, and have this internal conversation of, is it fueling me or fatiguing? That's what I want you to practice for the next 7 days. And understanding that, let's say you miss a time that you designated to pause and reflect and to understand, that's okay. Just pick it back up. What we're doing is creating a habit of taking control of those 6,000 to 60,000 thoughts that sometimes seem so hard to get a hold of. We are literally together practicing that so that ultimately we can proactively manage our thoughts and prevent unwanted behavior, unwanted words, unwanted circumstances by beginning literally with the thoughts of our mind. I do want us to check in again this Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, where I'm going live. And I want to discuss what types of observations you had. And were you able to maybe avoid something negative or really create something positive, helpful for you or those around you? So please join me here at Strategic Mental Health Services Live this coming Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. I do want to note that the information shared on this channel is not intended to replace any type of medical or clinical advice. This is for educational purposes and information purposes, not treatment. But please begin to have these conversations first with yourself so we can have this awareness. But I also want you to begin to have these conversations at the kitchen table, at the boardroom, wherever you show up and you have conversations, influence, and interactions. Let's carry on these conversations and discuss how others are doing the same so that we can create a community that becomes both proactive in preventing negative outcomes as it relates to your mental health. We do it with our physical health all day long. From the time that we are in preschool and elementary school, we are constantly taught about prevention as it relates to our physical health. But can you recall any time in your elementary days that you had classes on psychological health? No. So where's the opportunity? The opportunity lies within us as mental health professionals and within you as individuals to begin to shift the focus on psychological health as opposed to strictly focusing on pathology, or the other aspect is illness. What if we put emphasis on well-being, psychological health, proactive and preventative strategies and conversations we can have so that we build and then maintain psychological health, just as we build and maintain our physical health? Yes, this is why I'm here. And this is why I hope you are tuning in and will continue to tune in and bring others along on this journey of psychological health, and well-being. Thank you, and I hope to see you Thursday. Take care.